like in a way. But then actually, I've talked to like other guys who have had gone to America and have had college offers and have had offers from better schools. And one of the things I read actually in an article today that you said was that one of the rationale was I want to play and I want to develop. And if I'm sitting on the bench, Patrick Ewing, I mean, I'm not going to get any minutes, and I'm probably not going to enjoy that. And I'd much prefer to play and develop in still a really good professional league. And that thought process made sense to me. I've heard talk to guys who went to college who could have went to bigger schools, but then opted for going to a school that they would play in and then develop it. So that made sense then. Was that is that kind of
It is that wisdom or perspective came from my agent, and he was the one who, like, when somebody gives you something and it's just so you're just nodding your head like that makes too much sense. It was. It also led to what you're sharing is I wanted to be better. I wanted to be the best player I could be. But at that moment in time, too, going back to former interviews and what we were talking about here is there's also a level of doubt, and that fear comes back again. Because my first 2 years, like we shared, but my first 2 years in college, I was like the runt of the group. It was like they were picking on me all the time. So you feel a sense of worthless and you're not able to perform. So you see that class that you can't even score on, and they're dunking on you and they're half your size, and they don't get drafted. And then the next year it happens again, and those guys aren't getting, none of those guys are getting drafted. And now you're sitting there going, Jesus, if the guys that were so good were killing me like that, and I don't know that I'm getting better, I'm sitting there going, Jesus, what's it's like, what's behind door number one? Like, what is in the NBA up there? Because if these guys aren't making it in and all of a sudden they've got interest, I'm a little nervous that maybe
I'm not ready.
not going to make it either. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? These words from my agent over that lunch when he was telling me, they just made too much sense. It was one of those things where it was like a win-win. Like, okay, I'm not going to go to the Knicks, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to play. And guess what? You're going to make more money too. I'm like, hey, that's a real cool bonus. But it all kind of worked out to say, this is something that's going to lengthen your career. And I couldn't not partner with that. So there's more to it. Like, a lot of times when people hear that story or they hear something on the sporting news, people who have dreams and aspirations of walking the same footsteps, they're like, why did you do that? And you're like, well, there's a backstory.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one. And sometimes, yeah, you have to, if you look at it, considering your career in Europe, I mean, there's not many people that even have had that many wins, all those titles that you won.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it would never have happened if you gone to New York. And I mean, just I said this to Marty too. You see the guys that drop in out of the league like that, and it just doesn't have that.
Yeah.
I mean, the ruthlessness of it. I mean, good players, really good
Yeah.
players in college, and some of the best college players would go into the NBA and they would be out in a hot minute, and you don't see them again. Or they're in Europe then. And they went
I
the other way.
would see them, Mark, but I would see them. I would see these guys. We're talking the guys who went to Michigan and Alabama and Kentucky, whatever, and you'd see them overseas, and they wouldn't be on the Panathinaikoses or the Real Madrids. They would be on a mid-level team, and they would be deflated. Like, you would sit there and go, Jesus, this is the guy I used to see in all the magazines and all over ESPN. And next thing you know, you're giving him the business. And you're like, what's going on here? Like, you signed, you got a 3-year contract with, whoever. And it's almost like they got a little bit of humble pie and they realized they weren't who they were. And then it's like the decline in a career. Like, if I started at the Knicks and I would have had a bad experience, I probably would have been like,
there's only one way to go, right?
Yeah. But if I started here and all of a sudden I stayed there for a while and then I gave it a shot, well, all I get to do is I get to come back to the same place. And everyone's like, wow, what a great career.
Yeah.
True. it wasn't designed like that, but it just worked out like that. And I go back to your point. I remember seeing those college players, and it was just, they weren't the same people once they start to get that mental. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably been such a highly touted, or the hype behind them, and then to have that realization that they didn't do it in their first year, probably
Yeah.
that adversity would be tough, right? And then you
Yeah.
just deflated, you lose your mojo, sit on the end of a bench, and then
Yeah.
it can, especially with sport, it can really mess you up like that. That's interesting. Okay, so then you went to ceramic in first year, is that right? And then
Yeah.
how was the level versus like Auburn, for example, to go from there to what was it like?
I'd say it's about the same. It was maybe a little bit less on the athleticism, but as far as the shooters, the ball handling, the playing, you're looking at a very high level of basketball. At that time, I think Spain was the next level of competitiveness and salary below the NBA. Then it would have been like Greece and Italy, somewhere around there. But so it was very competitive.
Okay. And then you have Panathinaikos next, and is that where you ended up? Did Marty say he ran into you in Panathinaikos? Did I make it that right?
Um,
He said
no,
it was in
no.
Greece.
I think I played. I think he was in Italy, and I played him when I was with Tal Ceramica. I think that's right.
Okay. I thought he said Greece.
Yeah, I played against him, but never said a word to him. So it was,
Really?
yeah, nothing. Yeah,
Oh, you didn't know
didn't know each other. Nothing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I thought he said something about you guys meeting in Greece. So maybe I made that up.
Oh, we played in Greece. We played on the same team in Greece.
Ah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite seasons ever. Yeah.
So which season was this then? Is this
This is my fourth season in Greece. So I played the first year in Spain. Then I had 3 years in Panathinaikos. Then I played for Marousi. And Marousi was still trying to figure out its puzzle pieces. Because a lot of the rules with the foreigners and Bosmans and the Greek nationals. So they were going through a lot of different players. And Dickie Simpkins, who was with the Bulls, who was on part of the Michael Jordan special that was on there a month ago or so, he came over, and it was another one of those guys that they didn't have the same mojo as before. You could see, hey, I've just won a championship with the Bulls. I'm coming over here. I'm playing in this little gym in Greece. It's like, I'm not feeling this. I'm like, well, this is life. And so at that time, Marty came in, and I could still remember his first comment to me was like, some shit from the side, like giving me shit about, I'm just getting ready for practice, and I'm playing with one of the younger players, and we're shooting free throws with our opposite hand. And Marty's stretching on the side of the court, and I've never talked to this guy in my life, and he's just like, hey, you gonna shoot like that in a game? I was looking at hey, Johnny, come with me. Want to shabub?
It's funny because one of my best friends who played basketball as well. The first time we met, I think he said someone said to him, "Oh, you should give him a lift. He lives beside you." And he walked over to me and he said something really antagonizing to me, like, "Well, hurry up, then. Come on, let's go." And I just turned around and was like, "No thanks, mate. I'll just walk."
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And we ended up becoming best friends. But I walked away from that conversation going, "I'm gonna hate this guy."
Yeah.
It's funny how when your first impression, sometimes you're just like,
yeah. We laughed about that for years. Like, he was just like, yeah, I was just testing you, or this, that, and the other. And I'm like, whatever.
That's a good impression of him. Okay, so I kind of glazed over Panathinaikos, but you won three. Was it three? Three you had there?
Three Greek championships with them. Yeah.
And the memories there, like your attachment to that, like, is that something that you kind of, like the players, the coach, like you must have learned a huge amount there.
So going back, and I don't mean to do this, going back to the Tau Ceramica, the difference in the European style of basketball was very frustrating to me. I had just finished with this summer league in the NBA summer league with the likes of Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant. So everything was like fast paced, three-pointers, slam dunks. So when I got to Europe, thing was slowed down. And it's funny because you're at a young age and you're just thinking, yeah, we'll just go on instinct, just go. And they're like, no, we won't. We're going to go on strategy and tactics, and we're going to work on five. And I'm like, what? And so a lot of time that first year, I was so frustrated when we'd slow down things or this, that, and the other. I couldn't understand why they were doing this. Mark, I was kicking the ball into the stands. I was so pissed, and I was getting into fights all the time with Sergio Scariolo, our coach, the Spanish national team coach.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was telling me, like, get out of the gym, and then he'd tell me to come back, and then I'd go by him like, you're crazy. He's like, get the hell out of here. I mean, just crazy stuff. And so then to go back to Panathinaikos,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So the end of the Tau Ceramica year, we make it all the way to the finals, and this is the closest thing to success I've ever experienced in basketball at that time, to win a championship. Like, right. I mean, I've been getting beat down by Kentucky and the Wildcats for so many years and all that. Like, you just see that as that's the other side of the fence. We're not on that. We're not over there. We're over here. So I buy into sacrifice, patience, everything for the good of the team. And we make it that far. And it was a fantastic year. We go to Panathinaikos, and now I knew how to fulfill that role. I'm going to do everything for the good of the team. I played behind Dino Raja, who's a legendary player. And we go all the way. My shining moment, I play very rare do I even get to play. It was like Dino got to control his own minutes. His best friend was our coach. And it was very awkward. Like, every now and then, our coach, Pixie, would be like, Pat, come on, I need you. And then Dino would go, I'm not coming out. And he'd go, okay, go back. And I'd sit down. Sit down, and I would never get it. So anyways, our end of that season, Dino is very tired. We're playing in Olympiacos Stadium, and finally I get to play some. And I put in a couple of favorable points in a crucial moment and some rebounds and this, that, and the other. And the game starts to turn. And everybody from Greece and Panathinaikos remembers that moment. And I go home, like, we win that championship that year. I'm in the locker room crying because I'm like, I have never experienced a championship. I've never experienced anything like this. I finally won something in all of this. And it was the greatest feeling in that moment.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. That must have been, as you said, to go from a team where you getting your ass handed to you by Kentucky, and then to turn up and the Greek league is a top tier league, and maybe second to Spain in Europe, right? It's got some big time players in there as well. So that must have been an amazing experience to just kind of get the championship. It's just funny what you said about the Scalioso, the coach, because he's in Toronto now, and they won with the assistant coach. He's obviously has impact and has something. He's quite, and he's Spain as well. I mean, Spain have been so successful with that national team. And not to say that they have a lot of talent too.
Sure.
To again bring those guys together, and they've had huge success. So he's obviously got something. So I actually watched an interview with him today just to get a sense of the guy, and he seems like a formidable kind of person, if you know what I mean. He's just he just looks like he could be part of the Costa Nostra. You wouldn't know.
Well, he's funny because the NBA, because it's got so many cameras around it, you have to create respect. Even you have to give players pleasantries and the players back to the coaches, because the basketball world is so small. So it's like you have to kind of be, hey, good morning, and this and the other. I hate to say it, but a number of these European coaches are dicks. Like they are not cool
Your
coaches
best
to be
friend.
around. They're
Yeah.
not your best friend. They're yelling at you. They're screaming at you. They all they want you to do is perform. And to see these guys on these NBA benches, like what's his name,
That's a good point.
Masol, the Italian coach, he was with San Antonio. I almost laugh because I'm sitting there realizing I'm like going, none of these NBA coaches realize they're sitting there, you
It's
know,
like the psychopaths.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh, good morning. Hey. And they're being all nice. Then when they get their deal back in Europe, they turn back into the dickhead. And I would say, I would love to have a curtain with all the NBA staff, just open it up and go, you were a dickhead the whole time when you were hired.
Yeah, because I've had a Serbian coach, and I've had the Serbs are particularly wild and fiery. I mean, I'm Italian guys too. One of my best friends, he played in second league Italy, in London, and he moved over to London there just when I was living there the last 4 years, and he came on the court with us and lost his mind at the referees and was nearly chucked out of the league.
Yeah.
I mean, they have that temperament that, and there's nothing you can say, and then he'll just be like, he was a dickhead anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Messina was the coach I was thinking of. Yeah. Like
okay.
they don't like confrontation, but they don't mind starting it. So it's like, I want to hear my voice yelling. If you want to come back at me, that doesn't happen.
Right.
But I can say what I want.
Yeah.
Like Messina, when I was playing in Panathinaikos that year, the year you were asking about, we won. I had a teammate who was probably one of the top fours in Europe at the time, Nico Economou. And Nico got a big contract with Kinder Bologna after that year. He was one of the first Greek guys to leave, and it was somewhere upwards of $1 million a year. And so one of our teammates contacted him to ask him how it was going, and he's like, this coach is a dick. As soon as we landed, he's like, he told all the Americans and foreigners, anybody like the Greek guy, he said, I'm going to give you guys a month and I'm going to speak a little bit of Italian and English, but after a month, I'm only speaking Italian, so you better learn it.
Yeah, and there is that. There is that. I don't know what it is. But there's like I went to and I'd only experienced it very briefly, but I went to this camp in Italy, and it was a summer camp. It was like an exposure camp to pick up a contract, and they're just so dodgy, and they're so openly honest about it. They're like, they'll say stuff like, oh yeah, we're really corrupt around here. Like they'll actually say that to you, and they'll laugh about it. And then you're just thinking like this, like if somebody said that in Ireland, for example, just be like, you wouldn't deal with them. But over there, it's like, it's kind of a joke, and they're like, it's just a different way of, just a different.
Yeah, it's like they want you to be okay with because you have to be okay with their culture, or you just got to pack your bags and go.
That's right, yeah.
Quick story. A friend of mine, John Burke from Nace.
Is this the guy who
national team?
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So he's 7'1", 7'2" or something. He went to Hofstra. So we're both in Greece at the same time. And so we, from time to time, my wife and his wife, we'd all go out, we'd have, dinner, or we'd go over each other's places. And you check in on somebody. And so he was playing on a Division II team in Athens. So we're relatively close. And so he was telling me about how dodgy the whole club was, and this, that, and the other, and the car and the apartment and all these things that were going on. And the poor guy had like a size 18 shoe, and the shoes are falling apart. It's, a certain point in the season where it's like, you're in the middle of the season, you're not going home, you got to get them. And John says to the coach, he's like, Coach, I've got a problem. My shoes are falling apart. Like the soles are coming off, and the leather's ripping off, and the tongue is hanging off. And the coach is like, oh, okay. What size shoe you have? And John's like, I've got an 18. And the coach just looked at me and goes, well, I got a 16. And John tells me, he's just looking at him like, what does that have to do with it?
What planet are you from?
Yeah. So this is the best part. About another month goes by. Now the shoes are twice as bad. They're falling apart, and he's got tape, and he goes up to the coach and he says the same thing. And the coach acts like he's the first time he's heard it. He's like, what size shoe you got? He goes, I got an 18. He goes, I got a 16. And he's like, the invitation has no understanding. It's like, he can't wear two sizes too small, especially in a professional basketball game.
Yeah, I think that's an experience. It's kind of like the second tier Europe. Like when the funds aren't there,
Yeah.
these guys are just doing whatever they can to like. I remember the club I went to. He literally was rolling up with me and a couple of Americans in the back of a car into factories, pulling out towels for us just to get us. Like this is the kind of stuff that goes on. So
Yeah.
you probably did well to just stay in the top tier.
Yeah.
But down the lower leagues, you start to see some sketches.
Some crazy stuff. I think the next time he talked to him, he told him he had roller skates.
But yeah, okay, that's really cool. I just wanted to get a sense of the Panic at Mike experience, because obviously you can't glaze over.
Yeah.
And the so the year that you won the EuroLeague, that was, which year was that? Because
That's the following year.
That's following year. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's with Panathinaikos as well.
Yeah.
And is that your third year there then for the?
That's the second year. Yeah, the second year we win it, and we're in. Is that? Geez, now you got me thinking. It's 2000. I got to turn around. Because it's the Saloniki first. I think we won. Yeah, the Saloniki we won. We beat Maccabi Tel Aviv. The next year, 2001, we go all the way to the finals again to Paris, and we lose to Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I'm my mind. Yeah.
No, that's all right. No, there's a lot of dates. Okay, cool. I'm just thinking we're a time here, Pat. I know I'm keeping you for a long time, but there was a couple of other ones here. So Orlando. So obviously, then you went from Marusi then to Orlando, and I think I had a question here around. Yeah. So how did you get that call back? Actually.
Well, it's another long story. I'm leaving Greece, and I have my best year with Marusi, the year I was with Marty.
That's right.
And my agent calls me and says, "Hey, your first team, Tau Ceramica, wants to bring you back." And I'm like, "Okay." So they offer an amazing contract, more than I had ever been offered. And I said, "Let me do some research." So I call one of my former teammates who's there, and he's like, "Pat, I know you and this coach, Dusko Ivanovic, it's not going to work. You're too headstrong, and he's a micromanager. He controls everything." So I said, "Okay." So I call back my agent. I said, I talked to Elmer Bennett, and he says it's not a good fit. He's all right. So the phone rings. Then 20 minutes later, they've upped the offer. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, money's going to solve it. So I look over at my wife. I'm like, you know what? We're going to make a really nice apartment. It's going to be great. We're going to, so I'm thinking we're going to fix this. Very nice life over there, even though I'm getting yelled at all the time. So I go over there, Mark, and everything that Elmer said was true. I've never been around someone like this in my life. Like the workouts are grueling. He's yelling at everybody all the time. And I had, at that point, I'm 5 years playing professionally. I had missed some of my siblings' weddings. I'd missed some funerals. And I was pretty upset. I was like, I'm sacrificing a little too much. And I'm at a financial state where I feel pretty good that I can actually make some requests. So I talked to the president of the team, whose name was Kerry Hete. And Kerry Hete was, he's a good person, he's a gentleman. And I said, hey, this is what I'm going through. I want to be a part of your team. But during the preseason, my brother is getting married in Ireland. And I'd like to have, I think I asked for 4 days to go be a part of the wedding and then come back. So he writes on the contract, yes. So I'm excited. I head over, and then one of the morning running sessions, we're sitting there, and Dusko calls me over, and he's trying to do some sort of intimidation factor. And he's about 6'5", 6'6", and he's broader than me or whatever. I don't give a shit. I'm sitting, I walk right up to him, and I kind of went a little like head case on him. I got real close to him, was like, yeah, is there something? And every time he tried to do some sort of intimidation thing, I tried to do something just a little bit further than he would go. And he's sitting there, he's like, oh, you've got a decision to make. You can either go to your brother's wedding and leave the team, or don't go to the wedding and then stay here.
You're like,
no. And I'm like, oh, okay. Just like he's facing me like you are on the screen, and behind his shoulder, I'm watching all the junior players and all the players like tying their shoes, but they're all watching because they're all scared of him. Right. And I go, okay. All right, well, good luck this season. And I shake his hand, and I get in my car, and I drive back to the hotel. I'm not even in an apartment yet. I haven't even said it. I turn off my phone. I go to sleep. I wake up. There is, I think it was 18 messages on my phone when I wake up, like 2-3 hours later. And my agent's sitting there like, what's going on? What's happened? And I said, this guy's trying to renegotiate the deal that the president made. So then they call Kerry Hete, and they say it's all worked out and everything's fine. So then I go to evening practice, right? And when I get to evening practice, I get dressed, and all the players are like, oh, Pat, you're back. I'm like, yeah, it's all worked out. They're like, oh, good. And these guys are all great guys. So I walk out to the court, and Deuce goes at half court with his back to the entrance. So I'm walking in, and the assistant coach is like peeking over his shoulder. He's like, oh, yeah, he's coming. So it's all a setup. So I walk up to him, and then Dusko turns, and he makes this like, oh, Pat, what are you doing here? And I just start laughing. I mean, I just know, I've seen this. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I thought it was all worked out. And he's like, no, nothing's worked out. And I'm like, this is crazy. I just talked to Kerry Hete. There's a problem with communication between the office and you. He's like, there's no problem here. I said, yeah, there is, because you don't know what your president's saying. And he's like, no, there's no problem. And then all of a sudden he just changed his tune, and he's like, how many days do you need for this wedding? And I'm like, he's like, he answers it first. He's like, I'll give you one. I said, it's in Ireland. It's not in Barcelona. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, how many do you need? And I'm like, let me get 3 days. So he's like, all right. So they ask me, do I have tickets? So they take my tickets. Mark, this jackass gets me up until the last, how would I say, the second practice of the evening, the night before I'm leaving, and then I fly out, and then when I have to leave at 1 a.m. in the morning from my brother's reception, 1 a.m. when all the Irish sausages are being rolled out and everyone's having a good time and everyone's on the dance floor, I'm saying goodbye to everybody because I got to go down to Dublin. I got to get back on a plane to go back. Like, that's how much of a dick this guy was. So I'm like, all right. So anyways, I'm in. Now, this is where it gets to the magic. Sorry, that was a long way to get there.
No, that's an interesting story.
So I'm at my brother's wedding. I'm at the reception. We're all having a great time. My mom comes up to me and she's like, Pat, there's somebody from the Orlando Magic who has a phone call for you at the hotel lobby phone. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, I'm telling you. So I go over there, and one of the scouts from the Magic says to me on the phone, he's like, Pat, hey, what's going on? I'm like, hey. He's like, how are you? I was calling. I was trying to figure out how are you liking your experience in Tal Ceramica? And I said, it's so funny you say that. I said, because it's not really working out well, and I think I'm going to leave. And he goes, I think there's going to be a position for you here. Steve Hunter just tore his ACL. He's going to be out for a while. I think this would be a great move for you. I said, all right, I had it in the back of my mind. I leave the reception, like I said, at 1 a.m. I get back. When I get back, like 2 more guys are now on injured reserve because they're going down like flies. His training is just too much. We go down to Madrid for a tournament, and we're on the bus, and we're playing cards or something in the back. And he sends someone back to say, Dusko said you're not allowed to play cards. And I'm like, what are we talking about here? And so then like all the guys were like, no, we're not going to play it. I'm like, this guy's not going to, we're playing cards. We've got like a 4-hour trip. What are you talking? So we get down there, we're playing. And during the game now, he calls me over to tell me something tactical. And I was like, I just ran up to him. It was like during one of our free throws. So I walk up to him and he was telling me something. And I'm like, okay. And I'm politely, I'm telling you, wasn't a bit of rage or anything else. When he's done talking, I turn to get back in the game and he starts screaming. And the assistant coach is like, Pat, come here. And I come over and I'm like, what's the matter? I think they're going to tell me something else. And the assistant coach is listening to Dusko. And then he says to me, he goes, Dusko says, if you ever turn your back on him while he's talking, he's going to fine you.
That's what they do, they fine you.
Oh, I looked at him. I just started smiling. I go, okay. After the game, I knew I was done. I knew I was like, so he starts talking about something in the locker room and he's making up something that some people think they're bigger than they are or whatever. So when he's done walking out, I get pressed up against his back as he's leaving and he walks out, he turns around, I'm right there and I go, hey, I'd like to talk to you and have a meeting with you in the morning when we get back to Victoria. And he's like, okay, fine, whatever. So at 8:00 in the morning the next day, I go down to his office. I'm the only one in the gym. I knock on the door. The assistant coach opens the door. He goes, what do you want? What do you want? I'm like, hey, good morning. How are you doing? And he's like, what do you want? I said, I had an 8:00 meeting with, no, you didn't. Like everything I say, it was like everything was already
challenged.
Oh, it was already done. It was like they already had everything planned. So I said, okay, good luck this season. I walk into the training room. I see the trainer. I say, thank you for everything you've done. I'm walking out of the arena. Raja Bell is coming in. And he's like, what are you doing? I said, Raj, I'm done. Good luck this season. He goes, you can do that? I said, you can do whatever you want, man. It's your life. I get on a plane. I fly back. I give them back every dollar. They gave me a 6-figure signing bonus. I said, I don't want anything to do with it. Gave it all back to them. I get a call from John Gabriel, the general manager for the Magic. They invite me into veterans camp. I'm in the best shape of my life. Thank you, Dusko. And I make the team. But the funny thing is like this whole experience beforehand really let me see some distinctions. It's like, you're at a point, you reach a point in your life where you're just like, you can't intimidate. Like I want to be a part of helping this. Like I have no ill will in my heart. I want to do everything I can to win, but you're trying to force me into something. And I'm like, you don't have to force me. You don't have to push me in the door. I'm going to run in the door. So anyways, funny story on side of that is about a month later, we're playing the Mavericks in the preseason. And I'm walking out the Orlando Magic tunnel and Raja Bell is walking out the other one, and we meet at half court and we hug and we're
he quit too.
He quit too.
Probably because you said to him,
yeah,
just leave.
He said that he told me later on, he did some sort of interview or something or a book. And he said one of the biggest moments in my sporting career was this one morning, one of the players, Pat Burke, was on this team I was on in Spain, and he left. And I was like, what are you doing? And he said, you can do whatever you want. And he said that moment gave him the courage to say, you know what? I don't want to be here either.
Yeah. I had this now, a similar situation, but an unbelievably less amount of money situation. But I had a similar situation in London where some guy was holding me to your contract. And I said, well, you haven't actually paid me the money yet. and my 30th birthday was organized by my at the time, and he was telling me I couldn't go to it, and I'm thinking, no, you told me I had this day off, and now you're telling me you have to start like it was after Christmas or something, and now you're telling me to start a week earlier. At this stage, I'm 30, yeah. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to that training on the weekend. I have hotels booked. I have like this is, I'm at a point in my life where I don't need to say yes to this. And then
Yeah.
I just said no, and he said okay. He texted me like 10 minutes later, going, "I just talked to the team council, and you're now been relieved of your duty." And I was thinking, there's no team council anyway. You just made that decision yourself. But it was just
He's breaking up positions.
not the same amount of money, but like you just feel like you can't be
Yeah.
held to this, like subjected to this because you've been paid. You can't just behave however you want.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me realize then, not the same kind of level, obviously, but like
But it's the same culture understanding, like in a
same
professional
principle.
setting.
Same
Yeah.
principle.
I've often said this, and this is probably, hopefully it's interesting for the podcast listeners, is uh, one of the most challenging positions in European basketball is the European coach, the head coach, because they're always having to prove they're doing everything for the win. A number of years ago, I think it was the early 90s, the Yugoslavian methodology of coaching became very popular. Everybody wanted to get a Yugoslavian coach. And what they would do is it's 2-a-day training sessions. It's the hotel, even in a home game, it's the hotel night stay, away from family, getting away from distractions. And, Obradovic, who was my coach in Panathinaikos, he was, key in that because he started winning the championships with it. So everybody's trying to find a page out of his notebook.
Right.
So it starts to become very popular. So when these things are occurring, there's also this sense in the culture of what you have. It's like it's a pressure that you're hypnotized. You have to do what we say, and this is something that happened to me that I was very upset about. This is when I was with Panathinaikos, I think it was my last year there, my third year. In preseason. I was working very hard, had a good preseason, and I hurt my knee, and it was a throbbing pain after I knew I hurt it for months, and I was hobbling a little bit in it. And so finally I said, I want to go get an x-ray on this, and I want to go see about this. And this was during the season. And so anyways, they went in and they said, oh, you got a tear in your meniscus, and they can do a scope. So again, I don't mean to be snobbish about the American hospital system, but I was a little more, it was a preferential, and like, I want to do that before I ever want to do surgery somewhere else. And
Right.
plus they had the Greek team doctor had just botched Oded Katash's knee, who was pretty much the Michael Jordan of Israel, who came to play for Panathinaikos. So I apologize. This was actually in 2000. This is my second year. So I tell that they're like, okay, we've got it all scheduled Thursday. It's like Monday, right? They're like, Thursday, you're going to get the operation and everything's going to be fine. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I called Dr. Billings, who's the Orlando Magic doctor. And I said, hey, if I was to come over from Greece, would there be any way? They said, yeah, we could fit you in on Wednesday. Thursday, you'd recover. Friday, you'd be back in Greece. So I'm like, okay. So I started booking everything. And they call me in the office, Obradovic and Demetrius Ikoudis, who's now the coach of CSKA.
Right.
So they call me in, and they're sitting there yelling at me, telling me I'm going to get the surgery. And I'm looking at them silently, like in my mind, I'm going, you think you're going to put a knife or a scalpel in my body, and you're going to tell me what to do?
Wow.
You are nuts. So the story gets even worse. I head out. I'm at the airport with my wife. We're leaving, kind of going rogue, leaving. I'm at the Delta Airlines ticket counter. I got the tickets in my hand. She just hands them over. The phone rings. I don't even know how the hell you get the phone number to the ticket counter number right there in the check.
That's right.
I hear her speaking in Greek, like, oh, parakolo, oh, Panathinaikos. And as soon as she says Panathinaikos, my wife and I look at each other, and we look back at her. And she's like, oi. She's saying, no, this and the other. And she closes the phone. And we go, what was that? And she goes, that was the manager of your team. He was trying to cancel your tickets to leave. My wife, Peyton, immediately starts bawling, crying.
That's
She's so
scary.
emotional that they're trying to tell me what knife was going to go. I go back now. Manos, the manager of the team, he calls me and he's telling me, "You can't do this. You can do this." It's like, Manos, I will be back in like 2 days. I'll be fine.
It's
You
not like you're
can't.
Dennis Rodman going to Vegas. You're going to search your knee out, like.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
go home. I do everything like that. I come back. He's wrapped. I go from the airport right to Prague, back in 2.5 days. There was no time for fun or relaxation. Didn't see family. The first person to give me 3 kisses on my cheeks when I walk in there is the guy who tried to cancel my tickets.
Yeah, I mean, he probably realized he'd stepped over across the line.
Yeah, I was like, 3 kisses. You're like, oh, this is your tradition? Well, mine is when someone tries to cancel your tickets, you punch them in the face.
That's absolutely crazy that they rang the airline. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes to show the extent to which, I guess, if they're paying you that much money, there's almost like a sense of ownership there, and you're like, hold on a second.
Well, there's a fear. There's such a fear that I'm not coming back. And that happened. You would see that in Greece quite a bit. I remember on other teams, guys would get 3/4 their money, and they knew towards the end of the year, the tradition was if you weren't in the running for the top tier for the next year, staying in the Division One, those guys would leave because management wasn't going to pay you. So there'd be like almost a late spring break, and then they would never show up. And there was all kinds of, because you felt for them. You'd felt for these clubs because there was these nightmare stories that all of a sudden, like the airport security would call and be like, "Hey, do you have a Peugeot 305 silver? Yeah, license plate. Yeah, it's sitting here with the keys in it, and it's at the checkout, the check-in. They parked the terminal." And they'd come and they'd be like, "Oh my God, we didn't even know our player was even leaving."
Do you think that's because of the Greek league? There's so much pressure with the fans, or was it just like they didn't like
money.
the situation?
It's money. TV rights with the budget, so you have to make sure you're ensuring that you get to the first level. And if you're those top 8 teams, the top 8 teams that stay in it, the top 4 teams have to compete against the top 4 from the D2. But the top 8, they get the TV right money again. So they automatically, let's say they have $5 million for their budget for next year. Now, if they don't make that, they've got to survive. So what they're going to do is they're going to start cutting money, and it's a whole game. It's terrible.
The one guy I had on the podcast, he's a GB player. He played First League Greece, didn't get his money. Another guy I played with in the BBL in the UK, Ralph Bucci, was 4 years left and was still just settling the money that was owed to him from First League. He played, I can't remember which team it was now, but the same situation, both in Greece. And I was actually had a question written down here. Did you have any issues with your money? Maybe because you were like coming from.
I didn't. I had a great agent. My agent practically like controls the NBA. His name was Warren Legary. And Warren Legary started the NBA Summer League in Las Vegas, and he represents Mike D'Antoni and Alvin Gentry. He represents GMs and coaches. So when I was over there, it was like I had the backing. He would make one phone call, send the money. He'd be like, "Oh, money sent. We're going to add a little extra in there."
That's hilarious. That's why you got your money. That's why those guys stand together. It's just incredible. It shows you when you have that. Well, I suppose you just have that a good agent, really.
Yeah.
That was just Pat. I've got another ton of questions.
We're good. I'm enjoying it.
We're going to have to do another two because I've got a ton of questions. Okay, I've got like a pocket of small questions. We'll run through them.
Okay.
I have a ton of other questions about like your other experiences in the other clubs and stuff like that. But we'll run through I'm calling this hard in the paint. This is something I did in the last episode as well. So we're going to do 10 minutes. They're tough questions. They're not
all right.
Tough. They're not tough at all. You'll breeze through them, right? Some of them are ridiculous and they may not make any sense. Okay, so we'll start it off. So Will Ferrell movies, do you love them or have they gone stale?
I think they've gone stale.
Yeah, I kind of agree. He's originally from my town, Longford. There's another guy from the Midlands, Will Ferrell.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
traced his roots back, and you can actually see him on a radio show, and he's wearing the Longford jersey.
yeah,
He's actually from Longford as well,
yeah.
as is Mel Gibson. His mother was from
Oh,
his mother was from Longford, and he
I
was
didn't know
named
that.
Mel after St. Mel's Cathedral. So that's probably our only claim to fame. St. Mel,
Oh,
the Mel Gibson, who had some controversy, poor fella.
yeah.
But yeah, there you go. So okay, I think they're gone stale as well. For the record, uh, what was, and you don't have to say numbers here. What was the pay like in Russia relative to Spain in the NBA? Again, relative to each other, was it as good? You don't have to say numbers.
Uh,
As in,
I'd say it was when I was there. It was the best. It was the number one.
ah, okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
because Spain and Italy and Greece all dropped, and then everybody started going to Russia.
Okay, okay. I have a ton of questions to ask about that team, but again, we'll have to do another session. One misnomer about Irish people, as in so,
One what?
like a well-held stereotype that's actually not true about Irish people. So as a fly.
Jeez,
Um,
I mean, I don't want to give the most stereotypical one, but yeah, I'll say this is I didn't grow. I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's an American thing, but like on St. Patrick's Day, if you're not wearing green, that you get pinched. I've never heard that in my life until in America. And I was always like, I know that's not the question you're asking, but it's the one thing I say to myself is like, I think Irish are too, Irish are, are humble, but they're too proud to buy into like that craziness of thing. Of that
yeah,
it's, I don't know. I know I didn't answer your question, but
no,
it's,
no,
I
but,
don't,
but that's
uh,
good. Like the gimmick, we're not, we don't play in our own. Like we could brand the whole thing, and to
yeah,
an extent,
yeah,
the West Coast does. Kerry does it a little bit. Actually,
yeah,
they paint the
yeah,
houses all funny colors and stuff.
sure.
And us people from the Midlands are kind of looking at them scornfully, but they have the beautiful coastline. So
Yeah, like the reason I say that is like the past St. Patrick's Day, like Americans will come up to me and be like, "Oh, you're not wearing green, I'll pinch you." And I'll be like, "Would you shut the fuck up?" They don't fucking
nobody
do
does that.
that.
Nobody does that back home. Yeah. So we should
Yeah,
probably get a little bit more credit for not being as ridiculous and as kind of, because like that's what you get. What's the joke, like the pig under my arm, and I'm
yeah,
like leprechaun stuff. Like
yeah,
we're not that bad. Like it's like
yeah.
I remember telling somebody in America that we had no electricity, or that we just got electricity, and they legitimately kind of swallowed that. So that's,
Yeah.
maybe people are just yeah, that's fair. It depends who
Oh,
you ask.
I would also say this is another one is that you hear people. This is now I'm changing a little bit. This is the way Americans think about Ireland. I've had my dad tell me this when he was first over, that if somebody was to talk to him about, oh, you've got a funny accent, and he was out from Ireland, he said, they say, well, how long does it take to drive there from here?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
sorry, this is in the States, preferencing this is in the States. And then
All right.
they'd have just incredible things. Or people would sit there, oh, here's a good one. Here's a good story. Here's a good one for you. Playing with the Irish national team, we're playing, I'm sorry, no, on the World University Games for the Irish team. And we're playing Tim Duncan. Vince Carter might have been on the team. I know Allen Iverson was on the team. Kerry Kittles. Kerry Kittles, they're warming up. Kerry Kittles walks down to half court. We're in layup lines, and he walks. Oh, no, we're just warming up, shooting. Sorry, we're just shooting. And he walks up. He's like leaning his ear, and he's like, "Hey, y'all speak English?" We're all like, what?
He was serious. Was he
Yeah,
actually?
he's totally serious.
That's blissful ignorance area. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to call that ignorance, because
yeah,
I mean, look, some people don't know. My
yeah. They
Scottish
don't.
Scottish mate went over there, and he convinced him the haggis were a real thing. It was actually it's a food. It's like a yeah. I don't know if you know what haggis is, but
Is it like seaweed?
it's kind of like a black pudding, basically.
Oh,
It's like the
oh,
innards of a pig, but
oh.
haggis, they eat that over there in Scotland. It's like a traditional thing where we eat black pudding or white pudding. And
But it's different than the Irish black pudding and white pudding.
if you ever get a chance, Pat, to try haggis, blow your mind.
Yeah.
They call it haggis, neeps, and tatties. So neeps being turnips and tatties being spuds, potatoes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of very traditional, like we'd have our traditional stuff.
Yeah. It
So
sounds good.
haggis, if you ever get the opportunity, try that.
Yeah.
But it's not a bird that runs around a hill on one leg. And that's
I've never heard that.
so yeah, there you go. Okay, next question. So who's Marty Conlon's favorite musician? This will be testing if you actually you told me this on the
Sammy Davis Jr.
no, it's Bob Seger.
Oh,
Do you know
is
Bob
it?
Seger? Do you know Bob Seger?
Yeah.
He's from
Yeah.
Michigan.
Yeah.
And I had to look that up because I wasn't sure of his songs, but he does old time rock and roll, a few songs like that. But anyway, so oh yeah, and the other question about Marty: did you ever think in your head, "I love this guy, but that shooting form is just, what's going on there"?
Every game.
I talked to him about it. About the it's actually like it's almost difficult to actually put your arm.
Yeah. There's a video of Justin Bieber drinking water at a Laker game, and they're talking about how awkward his elbow is. They call it that very high elbow, and it's the same form as Marty with the jump shot. I'll tell you this: when I was at Auburn, I went to a Magic game, and I think it was the Magic versus the Celtics, and I'm so help me God, I'm sitting there, and I'm there with at the time, it was Peyton was my girlfriend. We're sitting there, and I look down, and I see Marty playing, and I said to Peyton, I said, if that fucking guy's in the NBA, I'm making the NBA. I told Marty that. I told Marty that.
Yeah. Definitely tell him that. He'd appreciate that. I mean, you do think but then I watched. I remember I told this story to him on the podcast, but I watched it with a Scottish mate. I was in Scotland at the time, and we went for a few drinks at my Scottish mate's house. And this Scottish guy was on the national team, so we loved basketball, and we decided. I told him I was going to try out for the national team. And he goes, "Oh, right." He goes, don't you have like Pat Burke and Marty Conlon, the ex-NBA guys? And I was like, "Yeah, I know Pat Burke because you were in the NBA, or you were, yeah, I just knew who you were, but I didn't know who Marty was." He goes, "Oh no, Marty." He goes, "Watch this." So we went around to his house. We're 6 beers in, and he's got the worst form ever. And we're just cheering every time it goes in. And he's like, the commentator's like, he hasn't hit the rim yet. And like, ever since then, I just remember Marty Conlon as this guy who looks terrible, but is super effective and had that head fake and just had a money jump shot. And
could you imagine if he was around the era of the video game? So if he was on an NBA 2K and he went for that shot and just it was a glitch and he knocked the head off the player next to him as he went.
Yeah, you could do something special there. I mean, I don't even think they'd it's such a strange form that
the screen might break while you're playing.
It's a very strange form. It definitely is, but at the same time, effective.
Effective, very effective.
Very effective. Okay, so I've got 5 more questions, right?
All right.
Cryptocurrency investments. Is it an investment? Cryptocurrency investment is the next big thing, or is it financial astrology?
Jeez. Financial astrology.
I just came up with these. I just off the top of my head.
Yeah. If it's not easy enough to explain, I think it's scary. So, yeah, I'd say astrology.
Astrology, I like it. Okay, that's what my brother called it, financial astrology. I can't pronounce this guy's name. Aiden I can't pronounce his name.
The young guy at Louisville?
Louisville, yeah. And I can never pronounce his second name. Agahan?
Aiden?
Yeah, so it's Aiden is his first name, but then his second name is, I think, his Nigerian heritage, and I'm just not familiar with the names.
Yeah.
So anyway, Aiden, I think he's called the Irish Hulk. We call him the Irish Hulk. So he's got a lot of hype around him. Is he going to the league, or is he going to end in top tier Europe? Or
I think he's going to the NBA. Okay. From what I've seen from him. He's very dedicated. He's very athletic. Seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. This past year probably wasn't what he expected because they did have a senior and I think a junior ahead of him. So I'm sure he's very hungry to prove himself. If that happens with all this COVID. But yeah, I think that he's got all the skills.
Okay, good. That's fair. What's with the Irish players in the national team? What's the gap for those guys to go to, as you kind of keep calling it, like second tier Europe slash, what do you see as the gap? I mean, is it just not like, what do you see? Because a lot of those guys are brought up in they went through the school system in Ireland, let's say, and they kind of came out halfway
Yeah.
through and went to America.
Yeah.
Do you see, what do you see the being
There's
the gap?
there's too many to count. So one one of them is the major is looking at a club system. So you have a consistency to say, okay, from 7 years on to 18, do you have a sport that's so popular that there's almost that trophy on the wall that they want to get to? Like, is there enough Aidens out there or NBA players or college guys that they say that's what I'm going to strive for, and it's easily accessible to see, so that it's like it's not a far off dream.
Right.
Most of the households in Ireland, like if someone came in and say, hey, mom, I'm going to go play. My dream is to play basketball in the NBA. I'm sure, any mom and dad or guardian over there is not going to like create a huge conversation. It's like, okay, oh, great, dear, that's great. Whereas over here, it's like, let's go get the latest shoes. Let's go get you in a training situation. And so what's happening is
Right.
that is the dedication of the dream. So like you have to buy into it because it's a happening. And if it's happening, it's readily happening. So you find these hot spots or pipelines. This high school produces 3 Division I athletes every year. Okay, so what's that high school doing? Now, if Ireland is not producing, it's not to say that they're not producing the same level of athlete. They're just not having the popularity and the success to speak about for so kids to go, this is a definite possibility. It is a possibility. There are kids from Ireland going to play college basketball, but some of those kids who probably are more athletic, they're going into other sports. Obviously, the GAA has created,
Right.
this is our sport. If you do this sport, you're a god. If you do this sport, that's pretty cool.
Right.
But if you do this sport, it's amazing. And this sport here, we don't even know if we want to pay you for it. Like we're in an uproar. Does it ruin the sport? But this one over here, you probably could get paid for, but it's over there in a far off land. So there's so much in that they have created a lot of popularity for the sport because it does fit the Irish culture. It's indoors, it's fast paced, and it's exciting. And Ireland loves sports, and obviously they don't want to sit out in the cold of the winter. So they have the opportunity to sit and go experience a game. So it's got a lot to it, a lot of tactics to it. So now it's just to a point, it's like saying if 1 or 2 clubs could really focus their, I hate to say this, but their franchise model, how have you scaled what you're doing so that we can replicate it 10-fold, 100-fold in different places? Because that's really the difference maker. Is once there's 2 levels, and I know I'm speaking kind of fast. There's two levels at which sports will gain sponsorship and popularity. One is if you're winning at a world standard. If you're winning at the Olympic stage, the Irish government will pump so much money into that sport because we're being recognized for this. Yeah. The other one is if it changes or transforms mind process. So if you have a crime-stricken area, let's say in the inner works of Dublin or Belfast or someplace, if you put a program together in there and that program gets kids on the honor roll, it drops crime, they're going to want to pump money into that. So those 2 things have to go into a space saying, how do we do that in the same place? Because the sport is not popular enough right now to be on one or the other, because it's going to flirt with success, but it's going to happen in waves. Oh, we got this one generation of 2 7-footers who came in, and now it dropped down again. Whereas if you could do the academics, that's the side in which you could do it the most consistent. If you create a program culture, it's like defining how Irish are Irish. They're going to go, we don't know how we're Irish, because you went through so much adversity. Like we talked about, the history has created the way the people are. If you can get a franchise model to do that inside of a small community to help 25, 100 kids, now all of a sudden they put the money into it. Now you can back it with the money and funds to actually get the equipment, to get the popularity of the sport, to get kids, the marketing of it, to actually come in and get people around it.
I like that idea, yeah. And it's something that's kind of happened in London a little bit. And they're having a similar problem where they're trying to grow the game. It's a popular participation sport, but it's not. It's maybe, and again, you're kind of right with the traditional sports seem to just, they have that, the reputational side of it, especially for Gaelic over here. I mean, it's hard to compete with that because you have families of just generations of tradition, and you don't want to lose that because it's part of the Irish culture. So you don't want necessarily steal those athletes, but at the same time, if you want to grow the sport, and now rugby's become this huge sport around because the national team, again, like you said, have done really well on the international stage. So then apparently now, like, I mean, my cousin's kids, for example, they're all playing rugby, and he said that that's become almost the sport now. It's even taken from Gaelic.
Yeah.
So now you've got these two sports, and you can get, not to the level of a basketball player in the NBA, but you can get paid. You can get paid now to play rugby. So that's
sure.
So there's maybe Gaelic guys that are now getting funneled into that.
Yeah. So it has a lot to do with what success or that someone can generate from putting that much time into something. Like when you have a crowd, like let's say you get one kid in Limerick or Offaly or whatever, and they are just constantly going to the gym by themselves, and the rest of their friends, they come in every now and again, but they're going to go play different sports and they're practicing different things. It's going to take a little bit of time, but after a while it's like, Jesus, this is not going to work. I'm up against everything. And any story of anybody who does make it, like I'd hate to say it, but I don't think I would have made it as far as it if my parents hadn't left. I just don't think that, the biggest fear children have is not fitting in. So first of all, being almost 7 foot walking through Ireland at the time would have been a bit of a shakeup. And then the ability then to try and get proper training would have been like, it just doesn't exist. Who are you going to practice against? Another guy who's 5'10"?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the competition needs to be there, but then the facilities and the coaching too, and that's it. And that says something to, if you can say somebody that almost was in Ireland but left and then made it, and you think that whatever's in Ireland now is not there, then we still have a way to go to have that kind of ecosystem that somebody can actually come out of it.
I'll say this though too, is they have done a great job in Basketball Ireland with their ability to create the model. Like they're doing really well with the youth. They're really focusing in on how do you create consistency. And this is a problem they have in America too. When the teaching is consistent, you can go from place to place and you've developed a certain level of education. So you don't have to keep hitting the reset. If you started with 10-year-olds and you're learning how to dribble, and then all of a sudden you're still doing the same thing, fundamental dribbling, when you're 15 and 16, that wouldn't be a uniform entity. That would be two different entities teaching something. But if it's uniform, it would say, okay, at 10 years old, we teach this. By the time we're 15, we're already going over help side defense. So then all of a sudden they go, okay, this is a great system because all the coaches have actually released their desire to do something, and they've actually bought into a system. So Ireland has started to do that, and they've done a very good job of it.
So they're all at one standard at a particular age, and then they across the country. I got you. Okay, right. We're going to try and wrap this up, Pat, because I know we've gone for a long time, and we're going to have to do a second one because I missed a ton of stuff here. Okay, so I think we kind of covered it in the last one. So basketball league needs to be a product in order to be successful. So if you don't have a quality product, you don't have revenue or sponsorship, and then you're therefore you don't get the higher level players, and the cycle continues. like for Ireland's league as well, it's just a separate question. It's just something that I've come back and I've noticed, and people, if you want to try and improve the domestic league here, that it needs to be. Oh, have you got a call? Sorry, you got a call.
Oh, look at this. Here, it's easier for me to bring you over. Look.
All right.
Typical Orlando is my Mickey Mouse phone over there that was going off.
I need to get one of those Mickey Mouse ones.
Oh, sorry. So you were talking about the program.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that the Irish League, I don't want us to be run like a charity, because that's an exaggeration of what's happening. But like that, we just need to maybe view it more like the only problem is there's a fine line, right? You just, I think we need to. I don't know what we need to do, but I think what I'm trying to say is, for example, in Germany, in the first league, they've now allowed like 7 Americans. It's almost like the fringe NBA guys kind of go there, and it's a separate league just for Americans now. And they've made it into a product, and it's exciting basketball, and it's quite sustainable, I would say. So I'm wondering, in Ireland, we kind of have 2 Americans. One of them is not allowed to play currently, so that's one of the rules, basically. So that's kind of strange. When I came back this year, I was like, okay, they're not even playing the second American. So you might actually be, a lot of the teams now have a model where they link with the university and they just do scholarships. So they're not actually paying the players. And especially now with COVID, there's less money. So it just, seeing as I'm going to live in Ireland now, I just wanted to kind of like analyze the league and just see like what could we be doing to make it a slightly better league, so that maybe one day guys could come back from college and play in the Irish League and maybe make money from it. I guess that comes back to funding.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it all kind of starts there. But
I think it goes a little bit further in looking at basketball Ireland or the Super League and asking what's the mission statement of it? Like what's the agenda that they're looking to fulfill? Because from a fanatic side of it, we can look at it and compare it to other things and see improvements the way we see it. But if we don't understand what their agenda or directive is, they won't add up. Right. So you could say to yourself, okay, well, hey, if we improve this to 3 internationals are allowed to be on the court, there's no rules, that would pick up the game, the quality of the game would come up, and then they would say, okay, well, then the Super League would be taking out the ability to promote Irish players. So now you're not protecting nationals, and you're not giving the opportunity for the nationals to actually gain insight for what we were talking about before. There has to be some sort of goal at the end. Like, I have to know I'm going to get to play. Right. Like the moment you take 3 and you kind of saturate your league with that, yeah, you get a better product, but slowly over time, those two other players on the court, there will be no bench. There'll be nothing left, and people will not want to go into that because they're not going to see a vision of themselves playing. They're going to actually get the negative naysay of like not being optimistic of, well, yeah, I'm going to be on that position. It's like, no, the numbers are against me, and that to me is a big point in that. Now, as far as the money side of things, I think that whenever you add money, you take on a lot of responsibility of putting together a better product. So you have to then create, okay, I've got to sell sponsorships and I've got to create the advertising for the television. And I'm not even sure if we can get the viewership because there's no proven entity right now of, do we have a market share? Yeah, we know how many people are watching sports. We know how much people are tuning into the All Ireland and all that. But basketball is very rarely or was very rarely on TV. Yeah, they do a lot of live streaming now, but can they sell that with sponsors on top of that? Because I think right now their biggest sponsor is Hulu chips or crisps or something like that. And I don't think it's a huge deal. And to me, that goes back into the agenda is like, we can see ways they can make money, but the reality is maybe they're just comfortable with 10 people on staff. They get I don't mean to call it a stipend, but they get a government stipend of, hey, we're going to get 5 million. And when we do this, this is in conjunction that we grow the sport through that. So it's like, I almost think you're right in a way that they could do other things, but do they have the almost the entrepreneurial mindset to how to change that? How do you go down to Germany and figure what's culturally relevant? Why is basketball more culturally relevant in Germany than it is in Ireland? And I don't think anybody has that answer.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, it's what I've been thinking is it just if the literally economics of it, like the demand isn't actually there for it as well, because there's no culture around it, and because there's no maybe, I mean, there's a certain history with it. There's a certain connection to America with it, but it's still seen as, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, it's exactly what you said. I was the guy in the gym. I used to walk around with the basketball, and all my mates like used to laugh at me. I mean, I didn't care because I loved it because I played other sports too. But they'd be like, I was always down shooting and in Longford, and like nobody cared.
They couldn't get it.
Couldn't get it, and that's kind of the same way. If you said, do you want to go watch a basketball match, they'd just be like, they might go down and watch it because they like sport. They might go down and watch it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not what they're going to do naturally. And if it's on TV, unless you know somebody that's playing, like someone like maybe, I don't know, Kieran Donaghy, he's kind of a very famous guy. Now, he's kind of one of these guys that's crossovers. So he brought some shine, I suppose, onto basketball. But even then, it just hasn't captured the nation the way like the rapture that goes up in a Gaelic match in Croke Park when Dublin are playing Kerry is it's primal. Like it's unbelievable, and versus like we're trying to get people down to basketball games. It's tough. So maybe it's just the culture isn't there.
Yeah.
That builds over time. Maybe when you get more success, and it can't happen overnight. Something like that takes years to build that, and that's maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think it takes a lot of small steps, because I've known of programs they try to, like, do you know what Taco Fall is?
Taco Fall, yeah, he was, yeah.
So Taco Fall, long story short, I called, well, actually one of my friends got a position as a high school coach at a private school here. And he asked me one day, hey, do you know how I can get some height? Kind of joking around because his whole team was all like 5'10". And just out of the blue, my college teammate, Mamadou Ndiaye from Senegal, called me and just checking in to see how I was doing. And I just threw this at him. I said, hey, it's kind of funny your call. I said, remember that academy that you came from Senegal when you came over to Auburn? I said, do you know anybody who runs that? And he said, Pat, I run that. I said, you're joking. And he said, no, I run that. I said, would there be a possibility to get a couple players for a private school that I have here and scholarships? And he said, yeah. And Taco Fall was one of the guys. So he came over.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah.
So Taco Fall came over in high school. First time I met him, he came into our training facility and to talk to him about that. Well, the idea then was we're going to inject these 3 basketball players, and obviously Taco at 7'6", and the attendance went just crazy. Just chocker block friggin' parking lot with cars and all. It's just insane. As soon as he left, it was a ghost town. And what happens is if you try to create a spike in it, you have to always then be recruiting for that next spike. So the funny thing is with Irish basketball, it's like there's almost a range or a spectrum of excitement. Like everybody possesses this, but to get a Shaquille O'Neal to be over there for a year, and then Taco after that, and then it's like it would be too hard. So now what you've got to create is go into the youth, slowly build it up, win over the audience, because grandma and grandpa and mom and dad have been watching their child play since they were 7 or 8. And now the natural progression is Super League. And hopefully they start to get their community wrapped around it. And then, then you see at the national level, that it should start to reflect in space, that the kids become wiser, they become more savvy in scoring and playing defense and picking up the game, and then winning at that world stage. Because
Right.
the girls just did it when they were at the finals of Germany. What was that, 3-4 years ago? And
Yeah,
everybody in
that's
the
right.
nation was like, how the hell are we in the finals,
Right.
against
Yeah.
Germany? And the game is actually in Dublin and it's on television. I mean, that totally flipped the nation to go, oh my gosh, there is something here.
Mm. And you're right. It has to come from a ground up, and it has to be basically building a good level at the grassroots level, and then building that up to get better players. And I even said, like, even from like I said this in the last couple of podcasts, even from when, like, Mike Bree, you played with Mike Bree on the
Yeah,
he one of the first guys to go to play at the Division One level, and then there's been quite a few more. And again, it could be, I don't want to dismiss some of the older players. Could have been because there's more
sure,
opportunity and there's more
sure.
people looking. But there's more guys, and now again there seems to be like almost double that, like 10 guys
Yeah,
almost. Like,
yeah,
so it's not quite there yet, but it's slowly fanning out. So maybe just by the strength of that, it'll
yeah.
take time, and then
Imagine now think about this too, is you and I are talking about this because there is a possibility of this going on. Now imagine a business starting up, if there isn't one, and let's say there's an agency that handles all Irish basketball players. And that person then creates combines of opportunity to find hidden talent. And now all of a sudden people are like going, hey, where'd Mark go? Oh, Mark's playing professionally. That the guy who's dribbling down the sidewalk is actually playing yeah, he's playing professionally. Yeah, he's signed with that. Oh my gosh, that's a possibility. Now you're saying that one person, Mike Bree, does it, then there's 10, but now what we need is a full-time person who's actually getting a financial exchange, who's going to speak this possibility, and they're going to do it every so often that it becomes, hey, this isn't a hobby. This isn't just about kids going to the park. People are actually having careers in this now. People are playing professionally because here are agencies popping up for this.
yeah, that's right. And it was kind of talk around some kind of like an academy that might have similar to what the UK are starting to do, and linking those academies with some of those academies in Europe, which is where they eventually, you know, kind of move into the links with some of those top teams in Europe. And so it's kind of like bridging the gap by building like as you say, or having combines, like a combine in Ireland that would actually have the top players come
Yeah,
and coaches come and watch them. You get a drawing in the crowd there too. So
I've had that little business idea for years. I've always thought to myself,
good idea.
there's years ago I was in Greece and one of my assistant coaches from Auburn came out and he was scouting Andreas Glenudakis. And Andreas, 7 foot tall, big man. And I was trying to get to the light here. So Andreas, 7 foot big man. And when my college coach got to Greece, he was so tired, all he did was sleep on the couch and he never saw the player.
Wow.
Right. And then he tells me, like, when he's leaving, he's like, hey, just tell coach that I saw him. And I'm like, I'm not saying anything. Right. So I asked him, I said, why didn't you actually go to see him? He goes, Pat, most of the time when I go to Europe, it's a plane, a train, a boat ride to a locked gym, to a kid who's not 7 foot tall, and to, something else, the hotel room that I can't stay in. So I'm like, wow. And then I thought to myself, why wouldn't there be an easier transition where people, because there's over, like, I don't know, there's 300 Division I schools or something. There's so many millions of dollars that goes into recruiting that if you put together a place in Ireland that would do this, let's get the promise of 20 top prospects in Europe. Let's put them in an English-speaking country, and then let's give 50 Irish the opportunity to do the same, to come in with those 20. So the Division I coaches are coming. The Irish kids are a plus. If we find a diamond or two in there, that's great. But you get the likes of Krzyzewski and Calipari and Bruce Pearl and all these guys sitting there, they're going to say, hey, listen, we're getting a golf package. We're 5 hours out from New York. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and actually, even the thought, because Ireland has, you just said it there with the golf package, like going to Ireland for a trip to go watch European prospects. He's not gonna take that.
Yeah.
And then as you said, you get 10 Irish guys that get picked to go and do that, and you put them in with those guys that can play at that level, and then see how they perform. Now, arguably, that's going to be tough for them. But yeah,
And but this is the benefit. What do they do when they go back to their community gym? They go back and they get shocked because something exceeded expectation. They come back and they say, "Holy shit, fellas, we're not working hard enough." And
that's
then that little bit is what happened when you said you left, you came back, and you wanted to tell those guys you were playing with, "Hey, you're not doing it." We need distinction that meets adversity. It's almost like someone goes around the corner and they see it, they go, "Jesus, you won't believe what's coming, guys. Listen, hey, we need to work a little bit harder here." Get 10 of them, to go around the corner and go, "Holy shit." The 10 of us need to motivate everybody to work harder.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. And actually, Mike Bree, I did the podcast with him. I'll send you that one. It's a good one to watch. So he's doing an academy in Sweden, and he said as soon as he stopped focusing on playing in the local leagues and brought these academy kids to the other academies, the Sabonis school,
Yeah,
he said they came back to their first year was rough. And he said they just slowly got better and they realized the standard they had to go to. And then he said we'd
yeah,
have 4-week training camps to come and, come at these tournaments, which is the best teams in Europe underage. And he goes, and then we slowly started, the standards started to rise because we knew where we
yeah,
had to be and the kids knew
yeah,
where they had to
yeah,
be. And
yeah,
that's the bit is the realization of, oh, we're quite a bit behind. And once you see, if you're competitive at all as a younger kid, once you see that level, you realize then, okay,
yeah,
now I need to step it up
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
That's
coasting.
and that's I think that's a natural way of allowing people to experience or gauge where they're at because nobody wants to be getting beat up all the time.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's a great because we did the same thing. We had something similar we brought a group from Panama out here and had a high school tournament, American high school. They all wanted to experience American high school. And a number of the kids were college level players. And the Panama kids, by the end of the week, had leveled up so much. It was amazing to see. And they went home, and it was like, I know when they go home, they're going to talk.
yeah, talk.
Yeah.
The really interesting point for Ireland, because we don't have an academy, is that the under-18 coach who I just talked to said, we get them in at under-18, they bring them to the European tournament, they get one experience against these teams, and that's just not enough. Because by the time they've adjusted, they're back on their way home.
Back.
They
Yeah.
may have got their ass handed to them, they may not most of the time against the top tier teams, and they're in like the B European,
Yeah.
they're still going to have a tough time. And then it's almost like you can't make the adjustment, you can't make the development, and they're back to playing in the local league. So
Yeah.
you need that academy that's going to bring in that competition, on a
Yeah.
regular,
Yeah.
reasonably
Yeah.
regular basis. So
For sure.
that's got to be something like that. I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm not saying I have the answers, but I think when you
Yeah.
discuss it with people, it starts to culminate and come together a little bit.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, all right. I'm just aware. I've just dragged this out so long.
I got
Sorry.
7 more questions.
Oh, you got 7. Okay, last one. Pick your favorite Irish player in the national team. This is part of the tough questions. Irish player. Who do you enjoy being around the most?
Jeez. I mean, I can't do that. I can't.
Because you like them all. Okay.
I like them all. I do. I like them all because they were like, we had so many great memories. We were just on a Zoom chat reunion a while back, and I'm fortunate enough that I want to say it almost goes 30 players deep because I started way back when I was 19 at the World University Games in Buffalo, did Japan in Fukuoka. Then I had a little break, and then I came back in, what would that have been, 2002, somewhere around there. And it was great to see so many people. It's funny because a lot of people that were on the Zoom thing had never played with each other. They couldn't connect. And so myself and Dan Callahan were the only ones that had gone that full stretch. So there's just so many great men. I mean, you know, we did things like we had a pilgrimage to the, you know, to the Guinness Brewery every time we were back. And we, you know, just little things that we would do together that just did, you know, kind of solidified that, you know, this was a strong unit and family. And I love every one of those guys.
Yeah, that's the sense I got from talking to Justin and Marty, that there was a bit of a brothership, which is amazing. Totally unfair question. Apologize. Okay, right. I'll leave you on this one. Have you got anyone you'd like to come on and see, maybe from the national team, that you'd like to hear a podcast from? I promise I won't ask as many questions.
Endebert.
Endebert.
Now, okay, Coach Endebert was, I think, the trailblazer in the 90s to get us all together. I only made it to the Irish national, the Irish basketball, even anything, was because my dad, he was a subscriber to a paper in America called the Irish Echo. And in the back of that newspaper, there was a little advertisement that said, "Attention all Irish basketball players, call this number." And Endebert was behind that. So Endebert kind of saw potential of what we could do with Irish Americans, and he went out and he made that happen. And I think that he never really got to experience, you know, that time, you know, played at a very high level together. But he knows the game. He was around all the people. I know that he kept up with every clipping and every bit of news. It would be pretty cool to see how he's doing it and some of the stories he has, because I tell you what, if he goes full go, we were lunatics. We were all 19, 20 years old, just having, you know, a bunch of young guys having a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try and track him down. John Burke, I'd like to kind of get. Do you have his contact details?
I do. I'll send it to you through the email. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Right. Pat, we'll wrap it up because it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Jeez.
Listen, yeah, I know. Sorry. I just and the worst thing was I had a ton more questions, and I looked at the sheet and thought I'll get through this in 45 minutes, and I just completely deleted every time. Anyway, I'll try and do better with the time management next time. But Pat, just to say thanks a million for coming on and all your time. Been a brilliant discussion, and I'm glad we went off peace.
Yeah. I hope it's interesting.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I love it. That's great. So thanks a million again.
All right, man.
We'll be in touch, all right?
Okay. All the best.
All right. Take it easy, Pat.
Okay.
Bye.